What is up, my friends? Welcome to Rebel and Create's Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where we hear real stories from real men living real lives. I'm your guide, Ned Shout. Fatherhood is not only about being a dad. It incorporates providing and serving a home, loving and serving a spouse, engaging and serving in a community, as well as intentionally serving your kiddos. Fatherhood is an adventure, one full of fun, wild, and most definitely messy stories. I'm super excited for you to all meet my new friend, Matt Beaudreau. He is a father, husband, and a longtime educator. He is shaking up the status quo. You could say he's rebelling in the education space. In 2015, he gave a TEDx in Santa Cruz on the opportunities he saw in our educational system. Since then, he has launched an Acton school in the Sacramento area and has plans to open more. He is an intentional human being striving every day to make the world a better place for our children. Enjoy this conversation with Matt Beaudreau. And if you dig it, please share it because we want to spread the word that fatherhood matters. All right, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. Super pumped to be talking to Matt Beaudreau about fatherhood. What's up, man? How are you?
Dude, so good, man.
Yeah.
It's fun getting to hang out with you.
I know. We've talked a few times.
Yeah.
But it's always kind of been about a question or something we're working on, not necessarily just hanging out and really getting to know
chat.
What matters to you.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think I told you when we did get to meet around a question prior to that I had heard your name years ago.
Probably watching The Simpsons.
And
I'm
just confused on what it is. Yeah. No, I had heard your name years ago as a guy who was really good at just connecting with people. I think it was in the context of kind of the youth pastor arena too. Was good with connecting with kids and was a good speaker and just kind of this all around good dude. So it's been nice, the last few months to get to know you a little more. So
here we are, stoked
Yep.
Stoked to talk about fatherhood because I know you'll have a lot of good stuff to say. So just for people to kind of get to know who you are, I'm going to just blast you with a few questions, okay, so they can build some context. Number one is, how long have you been growing your beard for?
Man, this is not quite as luscious as yours. This may be a month with a lot of trimming. If I shave and then flex really hard, like it starts to grow back really fast. Yes, I can go from 0 to Al Qaeda really fast.
Now, does your wife like your beard or no?
No, sir.
Really?
She does not. Yeah, she doesn't. She likes the way it looks.
Not how it feels.
But that's correct. Yeah, she does not. So it's a touchy thing.
Because my other good buddy had his beard for like 2 or 3 years, and his wife finally was like, I've been telling you it's gone, and I'm like, just looks like a boy now.
Yes.
And my wife won't let me shave my beard. Now, I don't know how to feel about this, but she's told me that I look more manly with it.
Yep.
So the problem I have with that is, what does that mean about when I don't have it?
When you don't have it.
I feel
totally
like, what did you think you were married to the last, 13 years before I had the beard?
Right. Doesn't change. No, I know, man. I totally get it. So I haven't had the beard really for almost our entire marriage. A little scruff here and there, but I haven't. But inside me, I've told her very much. I'm like, dude, I feel like a guy with a beard, and I know I look vastly different, but I don't know. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out, man. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
As white as it is, I'm still happy it's here, at least for a little while.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
All right. How old are you?
40.
40.
Yeah,
nice.
Big 4-0.
And how many years have you been married?
We have, this year will be 12 years married, and been together for 15.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. And how many kids do you guys have?
And we got 3. Got 2 girls and a boy, 9 and 7, and then my little man is 4.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So under 10, living that.
3 under 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is good stuff.
Yeah, it's good. Oh. And then what do you do for a living to provide for the family? And I know we'll get into it a little bit more, but maybe just give like the minute summary of what you do.
Yeah. I always have a bunch of things going on, kind of that classic entrepreneur in that way. My main thing, my mission it's not even my job, is building Acton Academy Placer. So if you're not familiar, Acton Academy is a global network of schools that it's a group of us that are essentially saying, look, we're going to complain about what schools look like by building something better.
Yeah.
And that's what we're really banding together to do. So I actually have the largest Acton in the network here in Roseville.
Wow.
And we just purchased another campus in Sacramento. And so we'll be putting Sacramento campus. We'll be getting fall of 2021. That'll be open too. And we feel like we're going to probably put 7, 8, 9, 10 around here in this area. So that is my main thing, my main mission. I do quite a bit of speaking as well to, Fortune 500s all over the world.
So for what? What does that have? What is that?
Yeah, and I kind of ended up being this
to?
tangential thing. I started out speaking in education. I've been in education forever, right? And so it really just ended up being this organic thing where I was speaking to organizations, educational organizations, whether it's higher ed, districts, whatever, and it kind of dovetailed where people were liking what I was saying. I was trying to create kind of this paradigm shift. I was rebelling against, traditional ed, right? And I had a company that said, look, I like what you're doing as far as this paradigm shift. Would you mind doing that with our research too, which is kind of, it was similar because it was about generations. It was about how to connect with younger people, younger employees. How do you recruit? How do you retain them?
Got it.
How do you lead them? What does that look like? How do you sell to them? How do you, right? They have a lot of research around that.
Right.
They said, would you come on board and start working with us and some of our clientele? So I've been doing that for quite a while too, over 300 keynotes the last 6 years. So it was a whole lot of plane time. Which 2020 has done a good job of making sure that I didn't do that anymore. So
nice. That's cool. That's exciting, and it just all fits together really well with your mission around education.
Yep, absolutely. And everything that we do is tangential. I got the podcast too, of course, which we were lucky enough to just have you on, and the podcast is part of that outreach too. It's all for scholarships for kids, and working on a virtual program and all. So it's all related to that mission, though.
Yeah. All right. So when you think about, first having your kids and them being toddlers and now elementary school, what has been some of the best resources to you? And maybe not connected to education at all, right? There might be this, the thing about being a dad is it's like a level playing field, right? So although you are teaching in this and you're education, you still are going to have some of those, I'm a dad now, right?
Sure.
And this is different. So what have been good resources, whether it's a book, whether it's a mentor? What do you think of when you hear a resource for being a dad?
One of the interesting places, you and I have talked before about kind of not having enough of a rite of passage for dads, right? Not having enough of these males to look up to that kind of bring you into fatherhood and say, look, this is how you do it. And it was interesting when we were talking about this before, because I didn't mention it. I was looking, I definitely didn't have that rite of passage. I definitely didn't have, what I had was a father who actually wasn't a very good father. And in a weird way, that's been one of my best resources. We have a guy that's going to be talking at the TEDx, and he's talking about, we have this theme of the hero's journey, and his whole take is like, man, I think a lot of times we respect the anti-heroes more, and he uses Batman and Joker as the example. And he goes, man, Joker, I think, is even more committed to his mission. He just doesn't mind, hurting some people along the way, but we all identify with kind of this anti-hero. In a lot of ways, my dad was almost that. He's kind of the anti-dad.
Yeah. That
has been a really good resource for me moving forward as a dad, going, look, I remember this, so I'm going to do the complete opposite. And I have this immense sense of gratitude, not just in general, but to him for that resource, because in many ways it taught me how I want to be a dad.
Yeah. Are you still connected to your dad?
Not at all. We're not. And that's okay. And that's, he did get to meet my oldest too.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a relationship with them, but did get to meet them, and everything was great there. And I don't have any, I harbor no ill will there, and I want him to, continue to battle his own demons. And but I get to think back on the dad that I have, and I really do use that as almost my mentor guide of, okay, he kind of took it this way, so I'm going to go ahead and go, a different direction. This is how I'm going to create this.
Did you always know that that's what you wanted? Did you know that you wanted something different than what you had?
1,000%.
How?
1,000%.
And like, do you remember a time where you're like, it is not going to be like this when I have my own family?
Man, that came so young. So my very first memory of my dad was being 4 years old and getting hit so hard across the chest that I flew back and slid across the floor. right? Like that's my first memory of interaction with him.
Yeah.
The earliest memory that I have. So I remember very early on, he was a prison guard, and I remember a time when he called home to say he was going to be working a double. And I remember my mom telling me that and going, okay, and then going to my sister at the time and my brother, and I went, hey, Dad's working a double. Like, it means he's not coming home tonight. And we all were like, yes. And I remember very early on, I was probably 8 years old, right? 9 years old when that happened. And I remember going, wait a second, we're celebrating the fact that he's not coming. Boy, when I'm a dad, I want to make sure my kids don't feel like this. You know, I remember very clearly thinking, man, it's got to look different. You know, so in a weird way, though, I really do. I have so much gratitude for that because it has absolutely made me a better father. Which is weird to think of that as a resource.
No, I mean, I totally get it. And I think that that's accurate for people. But it's like I would love to figure out how do not more people use that anti-hero motivation to then become what they would hope for themselves. You know, you look around our culture, so much of us, it's like we're victims with our story versus letting our story empower us. Now, clearly you're very disciplined, right? And so it's like maybe you have taken that, I don't want to say negative energy, but figured out how to channel it into something productive. So my question is like, how does somebody not just become a D-bag dad, but they take that and then turn it into what they want, rebel and create. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. You know, I would love to. I look up to so many people. I have so many mentors in so many different areas, and I would love to say, okay, look, here is your fancy answer of how you're going to do this, and here is the system that I found, and if I could do that and sell it for $19.95 and get everybody like, man, we'd be all set, right? I very much lean towards something that a gentleman named Larry Rosenstock told me a long time ago. Larry is a phenomenal educator. He runs the high-tech high network of schools down in the San Diego area. And one of the things that he told me years ago was that the complexity of humanity is allowed to be unleashed if the systems are simple. And then the reverse is also true, right? If you have these complex systems of behavior, it's going to beget simple thought, simple actions. You know, you use the military. It's like a very complex organization, but ultimately what it builds is at least when you're going in, is a very simple yes sir, no sir, and I'm just going to follow orders, right? So I believe very much in that simplicity, that I'm not going to become a D-bag dad based on whatever everybody's got bad stuff in their history. Everybody's got good stuff. It is literally the minute you make a choice. And it's not more complicated than that, right? How do you get, so we're doing this fitness challenge right now. Oh, how do you get up early? How do you get up? And I get up early. I've always gotten up early. Well, no, I didn't always when I was but at one point I decided, okay, this is just who I am now.
Right.
I'm a guy that gets up early to work out. And I made the choice. It's that when you make that choice, it's literally that simple. And then you make the choice again the next day. And then you make a choice. That's what discipline is. You make the choice again the next day, whether you feel like it or not. And it just becomes, that's who I am.
Yeah, so that's something I want to point in on, is you made the comment, that's who I am now.
Yep.
So, you know, you hear people say, I'm not a morning person. Yeah. Or, and fine, let's kick that one out. I'm not a reader.
Yeah.
I'm not this. Like, literally, life is just made up of choices, one choice after another, right? We have choices in front of us.
Yep.
So to say, I'm now this man who does this.
Yep.
And then just deciding, I am an intentional father.
Bingo.
So then I make the choice today, and then I make it again tomorrow, and I make it again tomorrow.
Yep.
Now, if you've made terrible choices for the last 5 years as a dad, it's not going to be one choice that helps you dig out of that hole.
That's right.
It's going to be a compound of choices, right?
That's it.
But you can do that if you choose to, and you're a man. Because we're talking to fathers here.
Yep.
It's already inside of you. You're already a warrior.
Right.
You're already a rebel. You're already a fighter. So just go make those choices. You know, I think like we love the war movies to go see, like, oh man, if I was in there, I'd be that guy who's killing it like that. Because there's this battle that we go, that's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the thing is, and it comes down like, how do you see your family as worth it, or your life as worth it? Like, we're not in World War III yet, that we're all going to fight for something. But if you could look at your family or your role as a father, with that same intensity and the reward so great. It's like, dude, embrace that warrior inside of you.
For sure. Dude, I love that you talk about this, because we talk about, at Acton Academy, globally, we talk about the hero's journey. We're referring to Joseph Campbell's work, everybody knows the hero's journey archetype, and I talk about this all the time, and everybody loves those stories. They love those movies. They love seeing Neo take the red pill and then rise up, and he's rebelling against all of, humanity so that he can come back and lead, but he's got this battle that he's got to fight, right? Everybody loves that, and they watch these stories, especially us guys. We watch these stories, and of course, we automatically put ourselves in the position of that hero and go, this is what we would do. And I listened to this great conversation between Jordan Peterson and Jocko Willink, and they said, look, most guys, you need to put yourself in the position of somebody else, somebody that you need to put yourself in the position of the guy that decided, no, man, I just missed the taste of steak and took the blue pill and went back. He's like, because that's who actually most of you are. Some of you, maybe you're more of a Morpheus. Some of you guys, you're the agent, man. Don't know. You need to put yourself in this different thing. We love to put ourselves there, but the reality is it is harder, because there are days where you don't have the natural motivation, the intensity. You don't have that naturally. So then you just have to have the discipline to do it anyways.
Yeah, I think motivation is kind of the wrong word that we keep using.
Sucks.
Yeah, like I can only be motivated for so long. But if I can know what I want, that I want my wife to still be around in 50 years,
that's exactly right.
Then I know that there's things I got to do today, even though I don't really want to do it.
Even though you don't want to do it. And that's discipline. And discipline beats motivation. Long-term discipline beats motivation every day of the week. And that includes in being that father. When there are days where I'm just like, oh, my kids are driving me nuts, I'll take myself back to, you ever see that movie Pursuit of Happiness? Right? Will Smith. Right? Great book too, by the way. Chris Gardner's story. It's even more intense than you know.
I should check it out.
His story of just growing up and the abuse that he faced before he ever got to that point. What you see
gnarly.
In the movie, right? Oh, it's nuts, man. So it gives you a whole new level of respect for him. But I remember watching that movie. I was with my wife and I was with her parents. We were in the Bay Area. We were watching that movie. This was pre-having kids. Actually, it was before. I think it was even before we got married. Maybe. I think we were engaged at the time. And I remember watching that movie, and there's that point where he's got his son, and it gives me chills. Like he's got his kid, and he's in the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
And he's in the bathroom, and he's just crying, man. And he's got his boy there, and I just remember at that point, literally just going, man, I will die before I let something like that happen when I have kids. Like I've got to keep this kind of thing in mind, and I've got to be just so grateful when I do have kids. Like I will die before this happens, and I will never take them for granted. And I will, I just remember being overwhelmed with emotion on that without ever even having kids. And I'm not a crying guy, natural, but that was one of those things where I could feel it, and I can feel it now talking about it too. So, if I have days where I'm just like, oh my gosh, like they're fighting right now, or like, oh, I'm just trying to get stuff done, and I will go back to that and go back to that moment and just go, man, dude, you are the luckiest dude on the planet.
It's important to have those moments to go back to.
Yep, totally.
So just to wrap that up, you think everybody has a choice? So no matter where they are right now, you have a choice.
Absolutely have a choice, unless you are ranked 7.7 billion on this planet in terms of everything is stacked against you, and there's not a single person on this planet that has something worse than you. You have got a choice. There's always that perspective. Somebody always has something better than you. Great. Somebody always has something worse. Great. None of that matters. You have got a choice in how you move forward.
So if some dude's listening to this right now and they're like, dude, my marriage sucks. My kids, I don't even know them. My job's this, that, or the other.
Yep.
And they feel like they're stuck.
Yeah.
What would you say is like, this is the first thing you should do if you feel stuck?
Yeah, dude. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and call, I don't know if there's swearing, I'm going to call bullshit on it. I'm just going to call bullshit. Like it just is what it is, right? First of all, suck it. Suck it up. And I think that's culturally not even like appropriate anymore to say stuff like that. I think a lot of times, but dude, that whole man up kind of thing. And no, we need to get in touch with our feelings. And all, all that stuff is great. Sometimes I think guys need other guys to tell them to do man up, right? So the reality is maybe you do have a bunch stacked against you and it can seem overwhelming. But again, how do we make this a simple task, right? And I'll go back to the old school, like Brian Tracy eating the frog or whatever he coined. Start with one thing. Start with one thing. Figure out what your priorities are and start with one thing. Make one thing better. Make a move towards one thing that day. the next day, go back to that thing, right? You don't have a choice. I don't care if you're 40, 50, 60, 20, whatever it is. You don't have a choice. Your life is what it is right now because of your choices.
Right.
Whether you like to hear that or not, you have chosen, at least to some extent, to be where you are right now. Now you've got to make another choice to go in the direction you want to go that day. And it's a long tail game. It is what it is. But make a choice and take it one step at a time, knowing you got to do that again tomorrow. It really is that simple. The problem is, if you let yourself get frustrated, you don't have patience, you don't want to do that day after day after day. And it reminds me of there's a lot of talk in business, and you as an entrepreneur, you understand this. It's whatever those statistics get thrown out, like 90% of small businesses fail within the first whatever, right? And maybe that's true. That might be true. But I don't think they fail because so much of that was just bad ideas. I think it's because people quit.
Yeah, I think people confuse simple and hard.
Yep.
They're not the same things.
Not the same.
Simple is make a choice.
Make a choice.
I didn't say it wasn't easy. Yeah, it's hard.
It is.
But it's simple to do a choice a day, or pick one thing and go after it. Wake up today and work out. Wake up tomorrow and work out. Write my wife a note today. Write her one tomorrow. Yeah, it's simple. It's hard. And really, I think that dudes too just need to be willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And look like a dumbass sometimes. Because, when you're digging yourself out of that, you probably will look like an idiot.
For sure.
But is that worth it? And yes, it's 100% worth it. The people who are saying you look like an idiot are the ones who are not choosing to do it. They're choosing to live in the stuck phase.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
There's always going to be people saying you're an idiot for it. It doesn't matter how successful you get. There's going to be somebody saying you're an idiot. Who cares? That's great.
And it's people who don't want to wake up and make the choice, right? So most of the time. So
that's it. And they want you to stay stuck right there too. They want you to stay stuck as a dad, as a husband. They want you to stay stuck right there too.
Because then it doesn't make them have to make a choice to level up their life.
That's exactly right.
All right. So then I'm going to ask you this question. That's super good. What do you think the role of the father is?
So I will go, again, I'm trying to take a look at what is the most simple way to do it. We can talk like protector, we can talk provider, but at the most basic, most simple core, I think it's being an example, right? It's being an example to these other humans of what a good person looks like, right? And that example may look a little different for each one of your kids too, because they're all different. They're in need of a different type of leadership, right? But it's being an example of the relationships they should strive to have, as well as the people they should try to emulate, right? My daughters aren't going to be exactly like I am. They're girls. First of all, boys and girls different, right? So they're going to be different in that regard. My young man could be a little more like me, so he is trying to emulate me, the example that he has seen me set day in, day out. How do I treat him? How do I treat his sisters? How do I treat his mom? How do I treat our neighbors? Anybody I come across when he comes to work here? How am I treating the employees? How am I treating the parents? He is watching that and taking that in 24 hours a day. This is who I should be. Likewise, my girls are looking at that going, look, this is what a man should be, right? So then I won't accept, I will have red flags going off anytime I meet a young man or an older man or whatever that is acting different than my dad. I'm going to start to compare that subconsciously. I'm going to compare that, right? My job is to give the best possible example I can, first and foremost.
I think that's one of the gnarliest examples is when you think about I'm an example. If you have a daughter, do you want your daughter to marry a dude like you?
That's right.
And I think a lot of us are okay with a mediocre life. You're like, I don't need a change for me. Like, whatever. But then if you think you're an example for your kid and your daughter isn't going to marry someone better than you.
That's right.
Unless you show her that there's a better way to be.
There's a better way to be. That's it, man.
Yeah.
It's an important.
And so then all of a sudden that you said, like, let's break it down to be simple. Yeah, that's simple. It's simple. I'm going to be an example. But when you decide, hey, you know what? I'm just going to dedicate my life to being an example for my kids. You better go to work. You better go to work on yourself. Man. It's going to be day in and day out. How did I speak to my family today? How did I react when my wife said this? And granted, I think on top of that, I think dudes need to give themselves grace, and then try again tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
I agree. And by grace, I want to throw this out there too, and this may be something that people disagree with, that's fine. And I think you do. I think you need to give yourself grace on that. But to me, grace is the acknowledgement that, look, I screwed up, and everybody is going to screw up. But then that's where it stops. I screwed up, and I'm not gonna dwell on it, right? I'm not gonna live back there.
Right.
But I think too often we go, so I might mess up again in the future. No. You messed up. Don't dwell on that. But you better learn from it. Don't do it again.
Yep.
Otherwise, that's not grace. That's cop-out.
Yep, totally.
And I think we give ourselves too much of that, where we allow ourselves to cop out, and we allow our friends to cop out. Our other guy friends, our other dad friends, right? And we'll sit there and rationalize why it's okay that we both copped out, and then we'll call it having grace.
Yeah.
No. Get better.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just being an a-hole.
You're being an a-hole. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so rebel and create. Mm-hmm. That's the mantra for this, mm-hmm. right? So we're Fatherhood Field Notes is the podcast, and we're doing it, right? You're opening up your field notes, sharing your life with us, sharing your wisdom. And the mantra behind it is rebel and create. And it could be as simple as, I'm rebelling against being on my phone at the dinner table so that I can create great relationships with my family. Yeah. Or it could be, I'm rebelling against something on a larger scale to create this, right? And we're probably all rebelling against certain things and hopefully creating something out of that. What's something that you are rebelling against, and what do you hope to create out of that rebellion?
Yeah, this my life is a rebellion. I think some people would there are people that do not like me purely because of that, and that's okay.
It means you're doing something right, probably.
It means you're doing something right. I very much believe that. I think it was Winston Churchill said, right? You have enemies, good. That means you've stood for something once in your life. And I think that is a beautiful sentiment, honestly. So I can really go a number of ways with this. Rebelling, obviously the easiest answer for me is rebelling against the education system by building something, better and creating a better alternative that, then starts to shift the minds on what education should look like, and I liken us to CrossFit in that way. Like it or not, doesn't matter. Everybody knows what it is. And they change the face of fitness, and now you have these other big box places that are trying to replicate what they've got going on, and they've got a great community, right? And so we're doing very much that same thing with Acton. It won't be long before I think everybody knows what Acton is around the globe, and like it or not, you're going to have to respect it, and it's going to start to shift other educational institutions, because the power in what we're doing is at this point now undeniable, and it's going to continue to be so, right? So there's a natural rebellion with that. I am very counterculture in a lot of ways in terms of, everything as far as the PC. We have rules in our house, right? The Beaudreau family rules. We have 11 of them. One of those rules that we have framed on our wall is think, because most people will not. And in that regard, I look at things like, let's go ahead and go with COVID. Great. It's great. That's there. That's fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and look at statistics, and I'm going to actually take my kids and go, all right, let's take a look. Let's look at the statistics. Let's look at, let's look at this from every angle. Let's look at this side. Let's look at this side. What could their messaging or agenda possibly be? What could their messaging or agenda possibly be? Why are there so many people on various sides of that? We're going to analyze the heck out of everything, and then we're going to come to a conclusion. I happen to come to a conclusion that is not really kind of the status quo, and I'm just going to go ahead and go with it. But what I'm creating there is I want to create thinkers out of my kids. Yeah. Right? Again, it's that example that I want to set for them. I do not have a desire for my children to think just like me. I do not. I have a desire for them to think, because that in and of itself sets them apart. Most people do not proactively think. I believe they react. More dads react. Right. They're not proactively thinking about everything. So I want them to question everything so that they can come up with an answer that they feel good about, and then live that answer out. You have no integrity if you say you believe something, but you do not live in accordance with that. That's what I want. That's what I want to create for my kids, are thinkers who will then act. And then if we want to take it to even another level of it, they'll also be at peace, understanding that other people will not agree with them. Potentially. Nobody's going to agree with you on everything all the time anyways, right? Whether you're following this, nobody's going to have everybody agree with them. So I want them to live in that and be at peace with the fact that I think I have actually thought through this quite a bit. And even if what I determined was correct is not the status quo, I'm at peace with living that and moving forward.
Yeah, I love it. And I go, oh man, we could just dive into those 11 beliefs. You said beliefs.
Yeah, we have 11. We call them it says the Beaudreau family rules. Right,
okay,
right
the 11 rules. Okay,
yeah.
we could break down. I mean, you just sharing that one is like, oh man, that's so good. Can I just have those rules so I can put them up in my house?
Yeah.
But here's where I want to go with this.
Yeah.
Us dudes who are just listening to you right now go, oh man, that was so well spoken. That was really thought out. You really clearly have a path of what you want to teach your kids. Mm-hmm. You know, your kids are all under 10 years old. So it's like you put this up at some time. So if I'm a dude hearing this and I go, man, I just wish, Matt, could you post that so I could just copy that and put it on my wall, which is kind of not what we should do, right? Mm-hmm. So I think most dudes wouldn't even have thought out what are our family values or rules or whatever.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this for a second. If a dude's like, man, yeah, Ned does this stuff with his family, and yeah, Matt's in education and he does this. No, it's not about those things. Like we would be doing this whether we were talking on a podcast or not. Right? We would have those rules, those core values, those beliefs that we're teaching our kids. So for dudes who are like not quite there, they want to speak the way you just did about some rule they're passionate for their family. Maybe it's not think, maybe it's something else.
Yeah.
But how do they pause their life that's full of work and dinner and sports and work and dinner and sports and work and dinner and sports or whatever, right? And go, I need to go self-reflect and go, what matters to me?
Yeah.
What do I want to teach my kids when my kids are 18? Yeah. Okay, so what would you kind of get the question I'm asking?
Yeah.
How do I sit down and write this out and then teach it to my kids?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the reason that I think I was able to speak to, you can speak to something much more eloquently if you have done it for a long tail thing, right? So I want to make sure that's clear too. This wasn't a fly, like we just figured this out yesterday, right? This is something that's been it was a long tail deal.
Right. So that means you didn't just say, we're going to sit down on Sunday night and we're going to sit down on Sunday night and come up with our 11 rules and then post them on the wall. Like they've probably evolved over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a long time. This has been a long time coming. Yeah. But it's been hanging up in our house now for a couple of years where we talk about them and enough to where there's accountability on all sides, right? Like I want to hold my kids accountable to that. More importantly, they hold me accountable to that too, right? If I'm going to be the example, I need to have the humility to have my 4-year-old go, hey, Dad, think. Most people won't. Are you thinking right now? And I need to respect that and go, yeah, man, good call. Thanks for it, right? Like that's what we're doing together. So, first of all, it's a long tail game. But one of the things that dads need to realize, part of that leadership piece as a dad is getting the input from everybody else there. It is not just here, I'm laying down the law, we're making our rules, I'm going to tell you exactly. Let's sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, be involved in it.
Be involved in it. You need them to be involved in it. Not only does that get the buy-in, but it shows, more importantly, that you care about what they say and that you're okay with them calling you out on that this is a team sort of deal. You've got to have that humility. That's leading an organization. It's also the same as leading your family, right? The best leaders aren't going to be the ones that go, hey, look, I've got all the answers, because bullshit, you don't. And that's including in your own family. Sometimes we think the dads have to have all the answers around something. My wife figures out a whole lot of things that I would not figure out and has great ideas of, look, we should do this. This is where we should go. So do my kids, right? They're not training to be humans. They're already humans, and they already have this God-given gift to see some things. Right. So sometimes I need to go, okay, that was a lot of wisdom for a 7-year-old. She's got that, Brielle. That was good. We need to start figuring out how to implement that in our lives, right? So it's literally having the conversation and listening. No preconceived outcome of, hey, I'm going to guide you to, dude, what are our values? Listen to what they say and figure out how to implement that.
Yeah, so maybe even a first step could be deciding to, go get a meal and bring it home, or you make a meal and sit down and say, hey, I'm going to ask something crazy, everybody. What's our family values?
Totally.
Is your family going to be caught off guard if you've never stepped up and said something like that? Yeah, they're going to think you're tripping.
Are you going to feel weird even asking the question?
Probably.
You might.
Probably, but that's okay, right? We're going back to that, make a choice, and
that's
then
right.
let it compound on choices.
That's exactly right. And if you're uncomfortable with that, look, the way human beings have always related, the way messages get across, it's exactly what we're doing right now. It's storytelling, right? This is what and that's why, that's why the Bible's so powerful. That's why God spoke in allegories. That's why he spoke, sometimes put these things out there. It's because we relate to stories, right? And it's great to have those stories to go back to. That's the power of film. It's the power of great books. It's the power, you have these stories to go back to that you can then use as kind of these guideposts, or the Zion means signs along the way, right? You can go back to those signs along the way to remember. So bring it in with a story and go, look, man, I heard this on a podcast, or I saw this written down, I saw this picture. Here's what this family did. When I'm asking you guys what are our values, I heard it on the podcast. This guy was talking about it, man. It sounded kind of cool. Here are the rules that this family kind of came up with, and here's kind of their thoughts on that, and maybe this is something kind of cool for us, or maybe this one right here doesn't really apply, but you can get the juices flowing through stories like that, connect through the story, and then just see what comes out of it.
Yeah, and I love it, because I think if a dad showed up and is like, you know what, I heard this, and you guys just mean so much to me, I'd like to do something similar. Like, your family's gonna first probably question you, right? So if depending, you might have to go at this a few times, but it's also going to mean something. Yep. It's going to mean something even if they don't believe it all or trust it all at first. But I love it through the case of a story. It's like, because you hear people regularly now with Instagram and social media, it's like they'll look at a family and they're like, must be nice, right?
Right.
I hate that.
Right.
So sit down and go, what are our family values? And then what are some others that you look at? And let's not just say, let's do that because it looked fun. That's that family.
Yeah.
No, what is important to us? And then talk about it. And let your 5-year-old have an opinion on it.
Totally.
What matters to your 5-year-old? Do you even know?
That's
Have
right.
you asked them?
That's exactly right. And what you'll find out is that there is some brilliance in those. We talk at Acton about the fact that every single person is a genius, right? Everybody's a genius. And our job is just to uncover what that specific genius is. God did not make robots for a reason. Everybody has a very specific DNA that is there to change the world in some way. And we get to try to figure out and uncover what that is. What if you take that approach as the dad and you understand that as a dad? Go, man, my kids, it doesn't matter how old they are. This is a genius right here. I need to uncover what this genius is, because that genius isn't just a product of, it's a combination of mine and my wife's. No, this is a very specific individual that has never walked the face of this earth until now. They have got something to offer me and offer us as a family that nobody else will. And take that seriously and let them know you're taking that seriously. You will find brilliance in those kids. You'll find brilliance. I learned from all 3 of my kids extremely regularly, right? But
by asking them questions.
By asking them questions and
listening.
Talking, and then actually listen. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. It doesn't happen by accident.
Right.
Right? You got to be intentional about that. But when you do that and you really pay attention and you really observe and you really try to break down, there's no better feeling with that. I learn from that, but then I also, I feel like I know my kids so well too, that I literally feel like, and my oldest daughter is kind of this way too, where she's very analytical. She observes so much, and, we're almost in each other's heads because of that. My wife hates it when we'll literally I might just get home from work. We'll have had no conversations around anything other than some text messages or whatever during the day. Obviously saw her in the morning, hanging out, whatever. And she'll go, oh, you know what? And I'll be like, yep. And then I'll answer her question, right? And she's like, I hate that you do that. How did you know? I'm just like, I don't know, just context of what just happened here, what just happened.
You understand.
I knew where your brain was going to go, and so I knew exactly what you were going to say. And she hates it, right? She likes it, but she hates it. But I can do that almost all the time with my kids, especially with my oldest, where it's like I can just see them kind of daydreaming. I'm like, I literally believe I know exactly what she's thinking right now, and I can say something to her and start that conversation. She's like, yeah. And she can do the same thing with me. Like, you can get to that point, and it's not some Nostradamus, some psychic ability, it's not that. It is that you paid attention to them so hard.
You're in tune with
you
who
are.
They are
in tune. I see her make a face. I know what her mind is thinking because of the face she's making, right? If you watch that kind of stuff from your kids, that's it. You will learn so much. There's so much brilliance there.
It's so good, because as you're sharing that, I think a lot of us we're like, yeah, I'm not just raising kids, I'm raising good adults. So as a dad, we lean more into the obedient structure, follow along. I want to help you be prepared for the real world.
Yep.
And sometimes in that we miss the relationship piece.
Yeah.
That you can have a relationship with your kids.
Totally.
You can have a friendship. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, my wife gets irritated because I have a son who's 11 and me who can think like an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
And we'll just be having so much fun, So there's been times where I'm like, all right, dude, now we're switching out of this mode. I'm your dad.
Yeah.
We're not, doing whatever we were doing earlier.
Totally.
But it's okay to have that with him and he knows, there's these modes like, yeah, mom was gone all day and it was just you and me and we were riding dirt bikes and, doing stupid things to each other, but now it's changed and we need to settle
There's
down.
a different dynamic.
Yeah. But you can have both.
For sure.
With your kid, but I don't even know that we're all been told that.
Right.
Man, this one time, I was so pissed off. Oh my gosh. I'm wearing a backwards hat, go to church, I go drop off my son and he's probably got a mohawk, and I'm, trying to be intentional dad of the life, right?
Yeah.
And this is probably like 4 years ago, and we walk into the church and the teacher grabs my arm and she's like, because I was bantering with him as I'm dropping him off. And she grabs my arm, she's like, you're his dad, not his friend.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, I was like, I wish you were a dude because I want to punch you in the face right now. But I'm like,
oh, gosh.
And it's just like, I still cringe, right? Gosh. Like, oh, God, your kids are probably so miserable.
Oh, dude.
Oh, but that's like one of those stinging moments.
And look, I'm sure her sentiment was, her heart was in the right spot. Like, I know what she's trying to say.
Right, but you don't know me.
Right.
At all.
Right.
Like, why don't you pay attention for a little bit?
Man.
And then if you want to say something, say it.
You can, but you're so right, man. You can simultaneously be both, right? Like, you and I can sit here as friends and be friends, and then simultaneously, I have enough respect for you where if you were like, hey, man, by the way, I heard what you said over here. I saw what you said over here. You need to shift gears a little bit. I have enough respect for you. Man, cool. You're right. Thank you for calling me out.
Yeah, like I might be offended in the moment, but I'm at least going to self-reflect on what you said. And I might have to come back and be like, hey, I know I was kind of like
100%
shut off for a moment, but I thought about it and you were right.
100%. Right? We can have that respect right there. We can be simultaneously friends as well as holding a line, right, of just trying to help one another, right? So we had the news, we had KCRA in here. Shout out to Deirdre Fitzpatrick, man, it's my girl. So we had the news in here a few weeks ago, and for a story around the school, and we do stuff every once in a while. And there was a guy that's here. He's been here a few times as a camera guy, cool guy, and he's like, man, how do you discipline the kids? Like, how do you discipline the kids? When it's here, he's kind of this old school dude, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you discipline the kids? And I said, well, man, I said, here at Acton as well as at home, the word discipline just means something different. We don't worry about disciplining our children. We teach our children to be disciplined. And that shifts the whole dynamic.
Very different.
Right? It's a very different thing. When you teach them to be disciplined and you lead by example as well, it's really, really easy to go back and forth between now I'm kind of being buddies, now I'm being dad. It blurs that line enough to where you really don't have as much trouble.
Yeah.
You just don't. They understand. They understand that you're the leader. They understand you have more experience there. You've had those conversations. It's easy to oscillate back and forth. When we go from a biblical perspective and taking a look at dad, right? And he very much wants to have a friend relationship. He told Abraham, get off your knees, man. I don't want you to, hey, get off your knees. Stand up. Walk with me, right? It wasn't, that's right, you better stay there and listen. It was stand up and come walk with me right now. One of the interesting things for people to find out, and this is where it gets us down a rabbit hole where, again, I end up going kind of counterculture, but, the original scriptures as they're written in Hebrew, right, there is no word for obey. There's literally no word for obey, right? We've translated into our English versions of obey, the law, right? There's no word for obey, and the commandments, so to speak, aren't even, it's not law. It is, here's my suggestions for how we live here, man. This is what you need to think about, right? And so we kind of take it from this perspective of like, look, I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to show you this. This is the advice, and I'm going to walk with you and walk you through all this kind of stuff. And that's kind of showing the discipline to our kids. I'm going to live the example. I have expectations of you living in this way too. It's easy for us to go back and forth.
So, okay, I've got a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
Because as we're dads trying to discipline our kids.
Yep.
Okay. Where to go? First, do you think that when you leave it more open and it's not like discipline, that because it's done more relationally and it's not hiding from a rule or hiding from a law, that then the kid, let's just use, a student, for example, is more in tune emotionally that I'm messed up and I'm willing to talk to you about it because it's not necessarily tied to you're so much of, I don't want to say you're not an authority figure because you are.
For sure.
But it's different than a principal. Like, I mean, I can't think of how many times I was in the principal's office looking at his stupid picture of the ship going off the edge of the, the square Earth.
Right.
So
yeah.
He's like, you're that guy teetering in that ship right now. Like, okay, dude. So because, let me ask this, then you kind of get where I'm going.
Yeah.
What do you think about consequences when somebody messes up?
Well, the consequences there's natural consequences to every decision.
Yes. So it's not so much that you're going to give a consequence because there was already, I'm not saying that consequence, but there's consequences.
There's consequence
in life.
built in. Right. That's exactly it. And you can do and you can have a microcosm of that at home. There can be a microcosm of like, look, this is the expectation. This is just what we do in the house, right? Like everybody at this point, you brush your teeth today. I'm sure you brush your teeth. I'm sure you brush your teeth before you go to bed, right? It's just something you do, right? And that's the hard part about parenting in this way or leading in this way is we just go, look, this is just who we are. This is what we do. And you got to do it every single day.
Right.
Because otherwise, if you're saying this is just who we are and this is what we do, but you only do it once a week, then it's not really who you are or what you do, right?
Because you're talking about the natural consequence.
The natural consequence thing. So, right. So they're like, look, expectation in our house is this. This is just what we do. You can make the choice to forego that, to not take that on. But, there's going to be a natural consequence of either this didn't go your way, or if it's something that I've got to, put a consequence. God, my kids, dude, are so flippin' easy because of this now. Like, I really, honestly, they're so easy. But it's just like, look, if your room is not clean, there's not, laundry is not picked up off the floor. By the way, you don't get to go in the pool. Like, that's just kind of how it is. Like, we're gonna go ahead and put that there because this is just what we do. We're not the family that leaves a bunch of crap on the floor. We're just not. So now that expectation was already set, I literally we don't have to have the conversation. We don't have to have a conversation. My kids just pick it up because in their mind, natural consequences, and so it's this microcosm.
So when they go to get in the pool and their room isn't clean, you go, oh, well, you can't get in so they say my room is clean, but you look at it and it's not clean how you would clean it. Then what do you do?
And then be like, so what is clean? What is clean for us? Like, what is clean? What did we decide was clean? What does that look like? You're just trying to create a very clear understanding of what it is, right? It's if you're looking at a freeway, there's a very clear understanding that you stay in this lane. Yeah, you can change lanes, but you need to do so safely. There's rules, there's boundaries that are there, and then you've got wiggle room within those boundaries, but you're keeping it safe. We're very specific, like what do we think? And again, bring them into that conversation. What do we think clean looks like in here? Is this a good example? Once we get it here, is this a good example? Cool. So then can we agree we're just going to go ahead and keep stuff right here? And if something gets outside of that, then that's going to take up our time that we'd maybe rather be doing something else, right? And so if we look at it and go, okay, what is that the example of clean? And they're, whoops, nope, my bad. And they'll go fix it, boom, 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 we're done. There's no other further conversation around it. And the reality is now we don't even have to have the conversation because we're consistent on that.
Yeah, and what I think I see sometimes parents do is say, okay, well, you can't go in the pool, or now you can't watch TV tonight, and then the parent ends up cleaning the room.
Oh, God.
Instead of letting the kid do it, right? They tell you, but then they don't ask them to do it, right?
Yeah. And it just creates confusion.
Well, right, because then I'm just going to get in trouble every time because I'm not going to do it, and you're going to end up doing it.
It creates confusion in any kind of relationship, right? If I said to you, man, hey, we're gonna chat at this time or on this day, and I never called you on that day or never met, and I just consistently did that, it creates confusion in our relationship
Right.
too, because one of us isn't holding up our end of the bargain about what we said, you know. So it's the same thing.
And that's what you're teaching your kids through that discipline.
For sure.
Creating discipline in their lives.
Yep.
Super good. Okay. I know we could talk fatherhood forever, so I'm going to ask you one last question. I want to hear, since we were kind of talking about, you know, me and my son's relationship and just the idea of having a son, you're creating something for young men.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. And I know this isn't necessarily the PC kind of thing, you know, either in this day and age, but I firmly believe boys and girls are different. Men and women are different, right? Yep. And I think that's a good thing. I think that is something we need to celebrate. I also think that from a very simplistic standpoint, there are, you know, different we use the example of sheep and sheepdogs, right? I think the majority of people have more of a sheep mentality, and I don't want to necessarily, I don't even mean this in necessarily a condescending way. Mm-hmm. It is just going to be a more go with the flow. I'm a good guy. I get a lot, like there are more of those people, and I think that's a good thing. Unfortunately, I think there are also, metaphorically speaking, wolves, right? There are people who take advantage of other people. There are people who will use physical violence against other people. There are things that I wish did not exist, but the reality is they do. And I think there are also men and young men who have more of a gravitation towards being a sheepdog. They are going to take care of other people. They are going to have more of a propensity to protect than other people. And I think that fringe group that we need to protect against the wolves has been cut off at the knees. And I think we do it early and often, right? We have coined this toxic masculinity, right? And assuming that all things, somebody that's going to stand up for themselves, not just in a physical realm, but in a mental realm, and they're going to take a stance on something, you know, and they're going to do so in an honorable fashion, but they're going to go ahead and take that stance and stand in the front lines for other people. That's been cut off at the knees, and it's been villainized, you know, and that's something that I think has been to the detriment of young men and just society in general. I think we're, you know, getting the repercussions of that. And I want my young man, I can see that in him. You know, we look at, from a biblical standpoint, you look at Dode, we call David, right? David, beloved, is what his name means. He was, you know, the only one who God said, look, you are my son. You are a man after my own heart. It's the only one he said that. And David was very much this protector. You know, we know that he made some bad choices. Yeah. He did some dumb stuff, for sure. But he was a protector. He protected his people when nobody else would stand up against the giant Philistine, right? He wanted to go ahead and go do that. He was this protector. And nobody else there was. I think that's a good, and God said, man, you're a man after my own heart. I very much believe that is in so many of our young boys, and we squash it. So this virtual program that we're starting, and it's the virtual now with the intention of actually manifesting a physical campus at some point, it's to develop those young men that are out there. It's to develop those honorable young men who understand kind of more that classical example of being a protector, and it is okay to have a strong voice, but you're also going to do so in an honorable fashion. You're going to say what you mean. You're going to mean what you say. We're going to get back to some of those kind of traditional, you know, classical manhood sort of values. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm working with Tim Kennedy and his group, his Sheepdog Response Group, to kind of put together this virtual community of young men who can rely on each other, learn to rely on themselves, and learn to go out and be protectors of our society in the future.
It's huge. It's so important. When is that virtual school or virtual class
We're launching this fall. So we've got everything built out for the most part. When I say built out, I mean as far as the courses, kind of the platform we're going to use, what that looks like. But we have a great team that's out here in the Rockland area who is actually doing all of the things that I understand how to put everything together, and how, you know, the scope of that and the sequence of that. I understand all that. I can't build a thing as far as the actual network and the websites and all. I don't know. So they're doing that, which we're saying a fall launch. So October, November.
And where would people learn about that?
So it'll be at apogeestrong.com, APOGEE strong.com. We'll dive into all of that. We'll have a bunch of content to allow people to see obviously what that is, and see if that's something that's right for their,
and what age
for
group
their
are you
young
thinking?
men. So we're really targeting to start with because we're virtual right now, we're looking at older teens. So we're looking like 13 to 18. We're looking more, maybe late middle school, high school age. That will be the focus. When we get the physical campus, we'd like to go more all ages like we do here now. But yeah, from virtual to start, we're
so when you say a campus, are you thinking it would be like a camp or a school?
No, it would be a school. It would be a full school. It would be an Acton school, but it would be kind of a specialty Acton specifically for
Man, that's super rad. This last year, my son, there was a kid at school who I feel terrible about, but it's like he was just a trouble kid, and my kid had never gotten in much trouble.
Sure.
And anyways, we've always taught my kids that we stick up for each other, and he has a twin sister, and he got in a fight at school.
Yep.
And I'm in the, I show up to the office as the one dad who's going to, and I like, you want my kid to crawl up in a ball on the ground and wait for help? Right. That's what you want my kid to do.
So that he doesn't, quote unquote, get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think so. No. And let's look around for a second. There's two men on this campus, the janitor and one teacher. And we're running this like, I'm sure there's tons of people talking about this kind of stuff, Yep. But it's like, this makes zero sense, what you're saying. Right. Like, I'm not going to respond that way if somebody comes into my home.
That's right.
Or my work of business and does this.
That's exactly right.
And so, it's exactly what you're talking about. My son, by the authorities there, he's cut off by the knees. Yes. Right? And he has a dad at home who's giving him a different story out of love and being wise, But at that point, I was like, oh, man, I want to just bring all these boys to my house. We live on 6 acres with a dirt bike track and a tree house.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going, let's just make our own school.
Totally.
So you talking about that is super powerful. I love hearing that it's a school and not just a camp. Yeah. Because I think that there is this, it's just super powerful. Yep. It's super powerful what you're going to be, what you're going to do with it.
And it's a day in, day out. And to be clear, we're not trying to make a bunch of savage ninjas that are going to go out and wreak havoc. Like, it's completely the opposite. If anybody gets the wrong idea, it is that, I have a hat. It's got savage gentleman on it, right? It is that you live as that gentleman. That is what 99.9% of the time, that is who you're going to be. You're going to lead by example. You're going to go ahead and be disciplined. You're going to do the hard things. You're going to take care of other people. You're going to put other people first. You're going to serve. You are going to do all of those things, those things right, which is hard to do consistently. Like what we're talking about is that consistency. You're going to do that.
You have to be taught.
But sometimes because you do that, you're going to have people that don't like it. You're going to have the wolves that try to take advantage, and you may be the one to go ahead and step in the gap. And then that is that small percentage of the time where you go ahead and be the savage that you need to be. And that's okay.
Yeah, nobody wants that. But when your house is getting robbed or you're something's happening to you, you want that person to be there. Yes. Yeah, you don't want them 99% of the time, but when you want them, you want them.
That's exactly
and we need them, and our culture and our society needs them. And that's one of my biggest things with Rebel and Create is when I look at our world and I look at the suicide, the abortion, the homeless, the human trafficking that's going on, all these things, if there were more men who knew who they were in their home as a father, I'm telling you, most of that stuff wouldn't be happening.
You're 100% right.
Because I would be raising my children, guiding them, showing them what it means to be a man, a human being, and all this stuff wouldn't be happening. So really, when I look at the problems with our world, everybody wants to point to the man for the wrong reason.
That's right.
It's not that he's just taking advantage of everybody. It's that he hasn't been given, I don't want to even say he hasn't been given the opportunity. A lot of men haven't accepted their role and aren't living it.
Agreed.
But they just need to be shown that's who they are, and then I think that they would step up to the plate.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. There's been a veil placed over where they didn't necessarily even see that was the role, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Man, that's super exciting. Yeah. So, okay, before I ask you my last question, we learned about the Apogee and we're Apogee Strong. You could check that out. If parents, dudes, dads want to learn about Acton and about schooling. Yeah. So first tell me, where can they find you and learn about schooling, Acton?
Yeah, so we've got, so we are Acton Academy Placer, right, which is Placer. It's the name of the county that we are in. So they can go to actonplacer.com. They can also find Acton Placer on YouTube, on Instagram.
And isn't there 200 campuses or so around?
And so it's a couple hundred campuses globally. Yeah, we have applications in right now to open 15,000. we won't open 15,000, but I think we're going to shoot for like a strong
Gnarly.
1,000
That's
campuses, globally speaking. So we can go to Acton, but go to Acton Academy on any of those platforms as well, because you will find, just like if you typed in CrossFit generally, you can get CrossFit's main site, but you can also find CrossFit, wherever, CrossFit over here, CrossFit over there, and you can find all of that, and you can get really a taste. You can do the same thing with Acton Academy as well. Google and YouTube are your best friends with that.
Okay, so if a dad's going, man, I've never really paid attention to the schooling thing, but I like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What would be a couple of books or resources that you would say, hey, man, you want to go challenge yourself and kind of have some knowledge and step up? What are a couple of books you would throw out?
Courage to Grow is always one that I throw out there, because one of the founders of Acton Academy, the very first one, Laura Sandifer, she wrote that about kind of the start of Acton and that. So that's a good... that'll get you kind of foundationally similar, understanding kind of our mission, in our journey as an organization. But for a lot of dads, what I find is that they've got to go unlearn more than just learn about what we are. They've got to unlearn what we've been taught in schools growing up. We actually have to unlearn that system. We don't even necessarily realize how ingrained, even though intellectually we can say, hey, look, Acton, that makes way more sense, right? Intellectually we can see that schools need to change. Nobody's denying that. It's the emotional tie we have to that, though, that you don't realize how strong of a stranglehold it really has on people. So for that, I always recommend finding books by John Taylor Gatto, Gatto, Dumbing Us Down, Weapons of Mass Instruction. Both of those, you can get those free. PDFs free. Go through and read those, because he breaks down the why behind how we have set schools up for so long. And spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with human development or developing strong leaders or developing people in general. It's about perpetuating a cycle, perpetuating a system, and creating more and more sheep. And we don't realize how much we were duped, and it's only getting worse. And I say that out of the nothing but love for teachers and administrators in traditional systems all over the place. God knows I try to help as many of them as I can. But the reality of the system and how much tighter and worse and how much more of an agenda is being pushed, that is also bad parenting. And our school systems are two of the biggest reasons we are in many of the situations we are in right now. This agenda has been a long tail thing. So John Taylor Gatto breaks it down probably better than anybody. Yeah,
so I'll tell you, you told me to read those books, and I just finished reading the John Taylor Gatto one, and it was mind-changing.
Yeah, it'll shake you up.
It was good.
John's rad. We lost, he passed away last year, but was just a treasure of a human being that, most people just will never get a chance to hear from. And I'll tell you, if you have gone through as a teacher to get your credential, you will absolutely never hear of him unless you search him out yourself, because it'll get people out of that whole thing. Yeah,
so I would just say, as a father, it's part of your role, part of your job to be in tune with that. Whether you do anything, you need to go and get some education on it, and 100%. Think about the education you're putting into your hobbies and whatever your career is or whatever. Your kids, it's super important. So even if you don't change the way they're doing schooling, be aware of it. Be aware. And educate yourself. Don't just listen to what everybody tells you is the right thing. Yes,
be aware, and not at a surface level. Yeah, schools need to change level, right? Be aware. Be aware of what they are actually doing on a day-to-day. What are the messages they're actually hearing on a day-to-day? How are they responding to those things day-to-day? Are they being fulfilled? Are they being, if you're really paying attention, like we were saying earlier, to what their genius is that being unlocked with what they are doing?
Right. And I would even say, we both really like Seth Godin, and you had him on your podcast recently. He's super rad. Seth's so rad. If you're, check that one out. But something I heard him say one time is that his kids did go to public school, I believe, but that when they got home, it was time to learn from him. And so I think as a dad, know that you have a ton of value to impart to your kids. So maybe you're not in this situation, or maybe you want your kids to go there for certain reasons, or you're, whatever. But I think that we miss out on our role to teach our kids. And it was cool.
For
I just did a
sure.
podcast with John Jackson. He's the president of a local university, William Jessup. And he said, parents, you're the first and best teachers of your kids.
Absolutely.
And that's coming from somebody who's, like you
who's
in serious education,
yeah, but
right?
it's true. Because and again, it's not just the education of like, oh, you're the best one to teach them math. No, dude, it's how you are living
life.
24 hours a day.
Yes, it's life. It comes back to that one role of example.
Yep.
Right, and your kids learn more from you than they do anyone else.
That's it. And
are they learning the good habits or bad habits?
Exactly
are they learning the habits you want them to have? Because whatever you're doing,
bingo.
That's it.
I always tell parents, man, your kids will do what you do far before they ever do what you say. So keep that perspective, right? That is the reality. Yeah, you're absolutely right, man. And what's cool about Seth too is he went back. That's another one you should read. He wrote a manifesto called "Stop Stealing Dreams," and that was his manifesto on education. He does a great job. That's another perspective shifter. I told him on the podcast, man. I read that in the parking lot of another school I was at, and I was like, dude, that's where I was like, cool. I've got to do acting, and it was cool too because Seth was just on another podcast a couple weeks ago. London Real with Brian Rose, right? Huge podcast, and they sat down and Brian said, I understand your take on education, and would you kind of explain that a little bit? And he said, yeah, sure. And so he started diving in. He says, I'll tell you who's doing things really well. It's Acton Academy,
right?
So which was
Heck
cool.
Yeah,
Man. It was cool.
I mean, to get a shout out like that,
it was cool.
From somebody who's super passionate about really revolutionizing what education looks
Absolutely.
like,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh man, super good. All right, I'm gonna ask you my last question.
Yeah.
It's about legacy.
Yeah.
So your oldest is 9. Let's say 30 years from now.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a 39-year-old. Kind of gnarly to think about.
And
you're standing out on the street. Okay. And you're peering through the windows of your children's homes.
Yeah.
What do you see now? Your day-to-day actions and words, right? Now, they might not say, oh, Dad taught us this.
Yeah.
But when you look through the window, you see how they're interacting with their family, the way they're living their life. What is the legacy that you imparted there? What do you hope to see?
Yeah. I mean, if you can get physical description of this, or you can get kind of the overall kind of, the more esoteric, ambiguous, sort of deal. I'd like to think from that physical standpoint, right? You see the smiles, you see the rules on the wall, you see, almost kind of this recreation of maybe a better version of the home that they grew up in, from a physical standpoint. You just kind of see that, and it's almost like, yeah, that's how we did that too, and that's how we did that too, right? So that you're getting kind of that physical representation of what we just always did. If they felt valued enough to felt there was enough value there to recreate that in their own home. You're seeing that example play out. So from a physical standpoint, and then you like to think from that more ambiguous sort of deal. I said I pay attention enough to my kids to a lot of times where I can just look, I can see the look on their face, and I can know what they're thinking, and I want to be able to look on those faces and just be able to know, because I know them so well, that there's peace. There's just peace there, right? Because the decisions that they have now made for themselves, that legacy that I have passed on to them is the ability to make those decisions that just allow them to live, at relative peace with what they've got going on. That's, can't ask for anything better.
No.
Man. Can't ask for anything better.
It's powerful because the peace can carry them through even times like this.
That's it.
So like this time we're in COVID right now, the smoky outside from fires,
right.
And your kids are seeing how you're reacting.
That's right.
Right?
Or
responding, I should say.
That's exactly
right?
it, man. That's exactly
they're seeing how you're responding, and these are the times that they're going to then take into when there's crisis is real or not down the road when they're living their lives. So powerful.
Yep.
Well, Matt, this has been incredible to talk fatherhood with you.
Man.
I just appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing the way that I know that you love your wife, you love your kids. You're intentionally, first and foremost, living out those 11 rules so that then your kids have something to look at as not just a sign on the wall, but actual living this out day to day. And then really giving your life to help other kids become the best versions of themselves, man.
Thanks,
so,
brother.
dude, keep it up. And it was just wonderful to talk fatherhood with you.
It was absolutely mine, brother. Yeah, thank you.
Seriously good stuff. Matt Beaudreau, incredible dude, super rad to sit down and talk life with him. From Matt's recommendation, I have read John Taylor's book, Dumbing Us Down, and Courage to Grow by Laura Sandifer. She's the one who started acting with her husband. I actually listened to them on Audible. But I have really stepped into, okay, what role do I play as a father in my kids' education? What is it that I want? What matters to me? What do I want to try? I think so much of the time us fathers are not really part of the education conversation, and it's just because it's rolled into that where mom has been making the decisions. And I'm not saying step on mom's toes at all, but what I am saying is that as a father, you have an opportunity to have a say and have an opinion on your children's education. And I think that you should do your research on it and decide. You decide what is best for your kids. I'm putting 3 of my kids in acting this year to try it out and see. But there's alternatives around, whether that be homeschool, whether that be alternative schools, whether that be charter schools, or if you're sending your kid to public school, also sit down and go, what are the things that I as a father want to teach them? What matters? What are the rules on the wall like Matt had talked about? What are the rules of the Shout family that my kids could say what those are? It's worth setting aside the time, guys, and putting in the core values, putting in the what matters to our family name. You are the leader. You can do that. And it's not from this hierarchical, patriarchal ruling with your thumb. No, it's I want to serve and love this family. Let's sit down and talk about this. Where are we going? Who are we? Where are we headed? And you have the opportunity to ask those questions. So do it, guys. Do it. It matters, and you have the power. It's already deeply innate in you. All right, guys, check it out. Every Monday, I put out the Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, interviewing great dads. If you're interested in a shorter podcast, I put one out every Friday. It falls under Rebel and Create, so you find it in the same spot, but it's called Craft of Fatherhood, where I discuss a question sent to me by a father. Feel free to email me, ned@rebelandcreate.com, anything you'd like me to talk about in relation to fatherhood. I have a goal. I am about to hit my 100th podcast at the end of October, and I want to have 100 iTunes reviews by then. The iTunes reviews really helps as men are searching for podcasts, for parenting, for fatherhood, that this one will rise to the top. And I put a lot of work into this because I think the conversations are valuable, and I want more men to hear it because I think it can help them embrace their own adventure of fatherhood. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Rebel and Create's Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do truly matters. Do not be like everybody else. Be yourself. That is who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact and create lives engaged in the craft of fatherhood. Talk to you next time.